Hey, it's Alex Radical from Board Game Co. And I know I usually say this, but this one's going to be a shorter video today for two reasons. One, this is not the usual Kickstarter roundup, to back or not to back, slightly different video this week, and that's because there are like only 5 Kickstarters that are new this week, and none of them are particularly large. They're decent, nothing wrong with them, but no particularly large ones. So next week we're going to have a to back or not to back video that is rounding it all up together into a single video. This week instead, we're doing 12 big box Kickstarters that weren't for me, or some title along those lines. Reason number 2, because reason number 1 is not alone. You know that I will happily go on for 45, 50 minutes, 2.5 hours if I need to, because I like talking about games. But reason number 2 is if this video goes longer than 30 more minutes, then my wife will leave me. Nope, not leave me, she will leave the house. She's leaving the house without the child, so I have to deal with the 1.5-year-old child, and I am a pretty decent father, but I'm not good at taking care of 1.5-year-old children while doing videos. That's a different skill set entirely. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the Kickstarters. There are going to be 12 big box Kickstarters. I have to go through these. I believe 2 of them I didn't back, but I traded for. Maybe it was 3. We'll go through them as I go through it. And because this is a Board Game Co video, I'll also tell you what I did with it when it was gone, and whether I made money, traded, or all that stuff along the way. Now, I'm starting off with Dice Throne. Dice Throne is number 1 because the reason Dice Throne is number 1 is because I'm still torn on this one. I may well be getting this back. I have Dice Throne Adventures. I have like a few starter sets to go with Dice Throne Adventures. I may end up getting back the full Dice Throne Season 2 big box chest and Season 1 rerolled and all of that, because Dice Throne is absolutely gorgeous to begin with. It's also a lot of fun. And there's a reason I got rid of it, and that reason is effectively because 2-player card games, 2-player head-to-head games, competitive games, I find don't last long in my collection. Eventually you get to a point where I know the Cursed Pirate too well because I've played this game too often, and someone else who I want to jump into the game, they just don't know the Artificer as well, and it becomes a mismatched thing because I know the nuances of the characters back and forth. To that end, I have found that most 2-player competitive systems do not stay in my collection. There are a handful of exceptions, but they are a very limited handful. Dice Throne may end up being one of those handfuls. I do want to get it back. I hesitated to get rid of this one, and I kind of want it back. It is a fun game when you just want to pull out a bunch of beautifully produced games, roll a bunch of dice, level up your abilities, have some fun, and I don't know if I actually will ever play this one enough that effectively it turns into me just knowing the characters too well compared to yourself. So I'm optimistic about this one. We'll see how it goes. It wasn't for me. I mean, I got rid of it, but also maybe it still will. And for sure, if I like Dice Throne Adventures. Dice Throne Adventures, to be clear, is a cooperative version of Dice Throne, where you take your characters and you go dungeon crawling through it. And if I like that, then this will be an absolute no-brainer. I'll absolutely be getting it back. Now, I have heard mixed things, and by mixed, I mean leaning more towards negative on Dice Throne Adventures. So to that end, I am not certain whether Dice Throne Adventures will be for me or will not be for me. But even if it isn't, I'm still eyeing Dice Throne. It's basically Yahtzee with powers and abilities and dice and beautiful artwork. Manny Tremblay is incredible. Roxley's production values are off the chart. Combine the Season 1 being re-rolled, and you just basically have way too many amazingly beautiful sets that can go on your shelf, that I kind of want to go on my shelf, and we'll see how that one plays out. So that's number 1, Dice Throne. Number 2, Time of Legends Joan of Arc. This is one that I traded for. Even I was not crazy enough when this came out. And by crazy enough, I just mean I'm crazy enough now. But when this was first on Kickstarter, I was not yet at the point where I was willing to drop $700 on a board game all-in. And that's basically what the all-in for Time of Legends Joan of Arc was. And many people did back it. But I passed on it. I was like, I'm intrigued, I'm interested, but also not sold, and I don't want to go $700. And I'm always a little bit more hesitant. Whenever I am tempted to back a game, I want to go all in, and if I can't go all in, I'll usually use that as a reason not to get it at all. Not always, but usually. And to that end, Time of Legends Joan of Arc was one that I was tempted by. But the miniature scale was tiny. We had these tiny little miniatures, and we got like a giant epic sprawling adventure. Like, I mean, it's these scenarios you go head to head with your different army builds or whatever and try to attack each other. It looks like a cool system. This is going to be one of 2 games on this list that I never actually played. I traded for it, I read the rulebook, I set it up, and I never got it played. I set it up 3 times. After the 3rd time, I gave up. No one else was playing with me. It just wasn't happening. And it takes a lot of time and energy to set this game up. This is a cool system. It looks intriguing. I still want to play it. If I am ever at a convention and I run into you and you have Time of Legends Joan of Arc ready to go and set up on a table, just refresh me on the rules, because it's been like, 6-7 months since I read the rules last. And I'm happy to play it. I still want to try it. And of course, I will make the mistake at that point of going all in and getting everything else and buying on the secondhand market or figuring it out. But overall, overall, Time of Legends Joan of Arc is an incredibly cool system with the coolest dragon I have ever seen. The legendary dragon is by far the coolest dragon I've ever seen in any board game. And it just, I want an excuse to get this one back. I don't know if I should. I kind of hope you don't find me and don't ask me to play it, because if I like it, there's a whole lot of, $889. That's a lot of money. This is the second Kickstarter, by the way, so the first one was a little cheaper. Second Kickstarter with all the new stuff. It's a lot of money for Time of Legends Joan of Arc. Now, by the way, for Dice One, I forgot to mention, Dice One is a game that I believe I traded this one. This is a long time ago. I traded this one for above its value a long time ago. And Time of Legends, I sold this one for more than what I traded for it, so got that. And these are popular games. Almost everything on this list is going to be clear in that sense. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea by Gamelin Games, the tiny big box the giant ultimate box from the company that brings you the tiny epic series. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is a game that I still think is excellent. This is a game that basically is a, what's it called? It's a 4X game. Expand, explore, exploit, exterminate, something like that, whatever it was. But the 4X genre, where you're going to have this map where you're trying to, expand, you're trying to branch out, you're exploring to different new areas, you're attacking other players, you're going to be leveling up your abilities. All your characters, all your dashboards have tons of abilities in the way you can level up your strengths, your competitive advantages, from the characters, from the buildings, from all these different aspects to the way your unique faction not only starts, it's asymmetric, but rather how it develops as well. It's a game that I eventually got rid of because I really thought it was an excellent game. I still think it's an excellent game. My big problem with it is that the amount of powers and abilities in play, combined with the amount of leveling up. So I may finally figure out, exactly what this clan does in terms of this, but do I know what it does when you level it up? Am I tracking properly the fact that your dragon can now eat my stuff? There's so many different ways people can augment, level up, plus of course the heroes and the unique hero abilities as well. And to that end, I found it was a game that I loved what I was doing in the game, but ultimately I just didn't know what you were doing in the game. And so I'd play the game, and then I'd have that frustrating moment where your power and ability just overtook mine. I attacked you, not realizing you had a defensive capability that did X, Y, and Z. And I found that frustrating. It fell into the category of games, there's a small subset of games in this category, games that I fully intend and hope to get back and play one day when I have more time to play games consistently with the same group of people on a more frequent basis. Right now, I tend to go more wide than I go deep. I play a lot of different games, a lot of different games, and I do get repeat plays. But I don't play games 20 times on a regular basis, not with a group of 4 people. Solo games maybe 2-player games as well. 4-player games, I don't get 20 plays in. Blood Rage, one of my favorite games of all time. I think I've probably gotten maybe 20 plays of it, and that's one of my favorite games ever. So yeah, this is one that I didn't want to keep for now. I do want to get it back at some point. This one I believe I sold at cost. I sold it for what I pledged for. This one was a little harder. The demand for this game is not as high as some of the others. I was able to get back everything I paid for it. I did not get the Paint the Miniatures pledge, but it was the one that I got my money back on. Moving on to Street Masters Aftershock by Blacklist Games. This is one that I was so pulled in by the game that I actually bought the art book as well. It's not something I regularly do, but in this case I made an exception. The art book for Street Masters Aftershock, the game Street Masters Aftershock, this is going to be a solo/cooperative game in which you are basically playing in a street fighting universe on a grid over here if I can find it. On basically these little individual maps with little objectives, you're gonna have map cards, map specific. Sorry, it's gonna be a modular system. The MDS, the modular deck system, I think it's called, from Blacklist Games that they've used in other games such as Ultra Quest, as well as their superhero game, as well as Brook City. And it's one where you basically have a deck for the heroes, a deck for the villains, and a deck for the scenario, similar to Sentinels of the Multiverse. But past that, this takes place on an actual physical grid, so it's more of a physical version of Sentinels of the Multiverse. I found it very intriguing. I played this one a few times, and my main problem with it, is I liked it solo, but not nearly as much as I liked it 2-player. I liked it much more 2-player. Solo, I would rather play other games, such as Marvel Champions. They give me the same feeling of trying to tackle a boss. Now, Marvel Champions, to be fair, is very different, but it gave me the same feeling overall of, as far as having my own deck, building out my system, and then attacking someone else. And so I preferred Marvel Champions solo, and 2-player, I liked this game a lot. The problem is my wife did not, and the main person I played 2-player games with as well did not. So I was left with a game that I would really only want to play 2-player, and the main people I play these style of 2-player games with did not enjoy it, or really not enjoy it, that's a little harsh, did not enjoy it to the extent of other games we can play. And so overall, I think Street Masters is an excellent system. I think if you've bought Street Masters, it's great. And I know many people prefer it solo. For myself, I prefer having multiple players. You can do it in theory, you can do it two-handed as well. I didn't like the two-handed as much. I prefer two-handed in other games. Overall, it is a game that I can recommend. I think it's a solid system, but it's one that for a variety of just different nuances of where it goes in my collection or not, I had to move on from one. This is one that I sold at a decent profit. I was able to list it. And in general, whenever I sell things, I sell at market price, whatever they seem to be going for. But this one, going all in on this one, I was able to get all my money back and then some on this. Then we have Reichbusters. Reichbusters Projekt Vril. This one I did a review on. This is one that, like Dice Throne, I still might get back. But unlike Dice Throne, I might get this back based on what they do in the future with the game as opposed to in its current state. In its current state, I'm not getting it back. If they have a season 2, if they mix things up, if they change things, if they make changes to the game system that make me think it is a better game for me, I would want this back. Reichbusters is basically a zombicide-ish kind of game. It's one of those games where you're going to have a bunch of heroes, cooperative system, you're going to have your heroes, your unique abilities, you're going to be exploring a map and taking out all the baddies along the way. It's more objective-oriented and it's more stealth-based oriented. There's differences, vast amounts of differences separating this from any game like Zombicide, Massive Darkness, any game in that genre. The miniatures were amazing. The art was amazing. I wanted to love this game so much. I saw Sam Healy... I saw Z Garcia put out his review of the game, and I was like, nope, I don't want to hear it. It's a good game. I'm going to play it. And I played it, and I played it again, and I played it again. And eventually I got to a point where I realized that as much as I wanted to like this game, it wasn't a game for me. Now, there are still many people who like it. I know, I'm pretty sure Jeremy Howard's talked positively about it. I think King of Averages talked positively about it. And for myself, I think it is a good game. There were too many issues that made it not a great game for me, and one that with the amount of boxes, the amount of content, the amount of everything, I was less likely to pull this one out. Primarily based around a few things. First of all, the rules were a bit of a mess. Secondly is the stealth system I found to be more frustrating than rewarding. I found I was just constantly performing a stealth check that wasn't really rewarding in the way it was implemented again and again and again. I prefer the stealth system from Assassin's Creed and from V Commandos, even though that one I also have issues with, but I still prefer that stealth system over this one. I liked the concept of Reichbusters. I'm still interested in Reichbusters. The miniatures were amazing. The art, the styling, the general rule set, the characters, the development of the characters and the unique abilities. Overall, I really like this game. I want an excuse to get this one back. Or alternatively, no excuses great too, because no excuses would mean that I have more time to play the other games that I love very much. This is one that I also was able to sell at above what I paid for it. Mythic Games, their games generally do fairly well, and it's a good enough system that I hope whoever got it is very happy with it, because it's a solid game. Moving on to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventure City Fall. This is one that I absolutely did not enjoy. Now, again, I'm sure it's a good game. I just didn't like the game. I didn't find anything compelling about it. This is one where, I'm trying to remember how it even plays. I like the miniatures. I'm not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan in general. I'm not against it, but the IP doesn't do anything for me. But you basically have these scenarios. If I can find a picture, you have these scenarios set up where you have to go through and accomplish different objectives and fight all the baddies along the way. Here's a general map tile. But it has an interesting system in it in which you basically share kind of tiles. You kind of swap dice. So you're going to roll dice, utilize them for their abilities, and then the dice on your left and right can be used by the people to your left and right. So you kind of want to be mindful of what others are doing. Kind of similar to Marvel United, the way that one plays out, that you're generally going to have to work together with others and communicate with others to see what it is they need so you can set your dice accordingly, so you can try to get those dice and those actions accordingly. And that's a good system. The rest of it I didn't care for. I like that aspect of the game. I like that aspect of communicating with others to try to figure out what dice they need. The rest of it I just didn't find rewarding. I didn't find the actions interesting. I didn't find the decisions interesting. And I'm not a fan of the IP. I think a lot of people like this game. And to the point, by the way, after a few scenarios, I went online and I asked people, I was like, is there more? Does it get better? Am I just missing something? Do I need to play more of the game? And most people said no. If you don't like the game after a few scenarios, it's probably not going to change much later, and so I decided to move on from it. It's one that I'm not, and because of this, by the way, this is also why I didn't back their follow-up, the Batman. Now, IDW Games, I believe, has closed their divisions. I think they've officially announced it. I can't remember if it's a rumor or they actually announced they're closing the games division. Now I'm not certain. But either way, going on from there, it's just one that I was not pulled in by the system enough, unfortunately. I believe the system is generally well rated. Keep in mind that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this series of games, City Fall and Change is Constant, were reboots of Shadows of the Past, and that was already a well rated system. And then, of course, they had the Batman one as well. So I think it's a solid system that a lot of people like, but it's not one that resonated with me. Moving on, we have Dungeonology the Expedition. Dungeonology the Expedition with 16 minutes to go. We're making decent time. I'm probably safer. Dungeonology by Ludus Magnus Studios is a game that, this is one of those games that made me rethink ever backing something that I didn't fully comprehend how it played, which you should always do, but I generally took the rule of, if I was interested enough, I didn't need to know how a game played. It looked intriguing on a surface level. And Dungeonology certainly looked different, which to me was a pro, but later became a con, because while it looked different, while it looked intriguing, ultimately it was different and was not intriguing. It is a game that relied heavily on take that as its primary core mechanism. It was a game where the entire game is about getting in each other's ways for the sake of getting in each other's ways. You're trying to collect these cubes, and people are literally just playing cards left, right, and center to stop you. Your whole mission in the game is to build up a good enough hand of cards that when everyone tries to get in your way and frustrate you, you can stop them from being frustrating. Playing this game successfully means it is just not frustrating. Not rewarding, it's just not frustrating. Now, granted, someone who really prefers someone who likes take that mechanisms may enjoy this game. This might be a good game for your group. For myself, I don't mind take that in games when it is an addition to the core aspect of the game. When the game is area control, and yes, you will take that area from me. When the game is Terraforming Mars, and yes, occasionally you're going to kill a few of my plants. But imagine Terraforming Mars where every card, or every other card, was a card that hurt someone else. That is what Dungeonology was. A game where every card or every other card was designed to get in the way of others. I did not like this game. I gave it 2 plays and I moved on from it right away. It was one of the more frustrating experiences I've had in terms of, the game looks gorgeous. I'm still sad about the expansions and material and content that I won't get to experience. And yet, while I'm sad about the gorgeousness of the game, the gorgeousness of the system, the world, all that, I'm not sad about the actual gameplay that I'll miss. This is also one that I was able to turn around and sell this one. I sold this one at cost. I didn't even try to get more than what I paid for. I was very eager to get rid of this one. Moving on, we have Batman Gotham City Chronicles, the second of the games on this list that I have not played. Batman Gotham City Chronicles is one that I managed to buy someone else's late pledge off them. I missed the Kickstarter, and I was super sad about that. My son, one of my sons, is obsessed with Batman. He absolutely loves Batman. His favorite color is black. Have you ever met a 6-year-old whose favorite color is black? Because his favorite color is black, with his second favorite color being yellow. Can you figure out why? Because of Batman, that's why. And so I had to get a Batman miniatures game. It wasn't even a question. Combine that with this being a re-implemented version of Conan, a game I've always meant to try but never got around to. It looked streamlined, it looked interesting, it looked fun. The core aspect of the management of your cubes and how the bad player or whatever it is trying to manage that, it looked phenomenally well done. It looked interesting. The miniatures were gorgeous. The IP, everything about this game, I was intrigued by. Look at these miniatures. And I finally managed to get my hands on a copy of someone else's late pledge, someone else's pledge, where I bought their pledge off of them effectively. I would spend time looking at the miniatures on this page, not the Bat Cow. We've covered this. I don't care for silly things in games, but, well, silly's relative. Either way. But anyways, just going over these miniatures, I was just obsessed with the game and the concept and all that. And then the reviews started dropping. And far too many of them complained about, first of all, a incredibly hard to get through rulebook, which is not great considering this is a re-implemented version of another game. It should ideally be better by now. And then secondly, and more importantly, and this is the part that really killed it for me, I saw far too many people complaining that the ideal way to play this game is to rush past things. That the idea is you want to hit people, you want to get in their face, you're Batman, you want to fight, this should be a fighting game. And yet all too often the core way to win was not to fight, was to avoid fighting all the time. Which, as a moral lesson in life, that's excellent, that's great, I'm all for that. As a game where I'm Batman, I don't want to spend my whole time trying to most efficiently run past you. One of the reasons I never enjoyed Bloodborne, the video game, was because if I die, in my head, part of dying means I have to then go and fight you again and kill you all. Not sit there and just run past old Yarnum and go into whatever. Now, this is the part where I usually get like 17 dislikes from the people who love Bloodborne. I appreciate it, y'all. It's all good. You can dislike away. Bloodborne wasn't a game for me. It's a game for a lot of people. Similarly, Batman might be a game for you. There's a lot of people who still rate this game incredibly well. There's a lot of cool things about this game system to like. If I'm gonna be Batman, I want to mess you up. I'm sorry, I just do. Anyways, Batman is one that I was able to sell at more than what I paid for it, even though I already paid a premium for it because I took someone else's pledge. But this is one that was popular, and people wanted it because it's Batman, and it's Monolith. So altogether a solid package, but not one that I kept for myself. Moving on, we have Bloodborne the board game. Speaking of old yarner, that wasn't planned, by the way. I knew this was coming. I didn't know it was exactly next. Either way, Bloodborne the board game from CMON is one that I got this game. I backed it. I was excited for it. Then I started to see people's giant stacks of boxes as tall as themselves in terms of how much content there is for this game. I spent a lot of money on this game, and I was both intimidated but still excited. And then I had the opportunity to play it online. I had the opportunity to play at a TTS game with the designer, actually, with Michael Chanel. And I thought it was okay. And I thought it was very true to the video game, but I didn't like the video game. I backed this game thinking that it would not be like the video game, because how often are games actually like their IP? How can you actually mimic the feel of Bloodborne, the video game? Well, as far as I'm concerned, they mimic the feel perfectly, which is a testament to them. It's a testament to everyone who backed the game because they like Bloodborne. But for me, that made it a game that wasn't for me. The game felt frustrating as you constantly manage the tension of trying to figure out what you needed to level up, how you need to use your action, the timing of different events. It worked well. And then characters would respawn. I hated that. I hated when I had the monsters respawn. You'd finally fight the monsters to kill them, figure out what you need to do, and then when you get to these points on the map, on the timeline, they just respawn. That was so immensely frustrating. Is it rewarding to actually work together and take down the big bads in this game? Absolutely it is. Was the game more frustrating for me based on the way I and my group like to play games? Yeah, I think it was. So yeah, Bloodborne the board game. It's a great game system. The miniatures are amazing. This is typical CMON status for everything. Miniatures, world building, art, the amount of weapons, variety, the amount of content you have for this game. If you went all in on this game, you will never run out of content for this game. It is just obscene how much stuff you get. And yet Bloodborne, as excited as I was for the campaign, I enjoyed this campaign. This campaign did what, like $4 million? That's insanity. And yet, it just wasn't a game for me at the end of the day. This is another one where I was able to sell at a decent profit because people want Bloodborne. Moving on to Dwellings of Eldervale. We're starting to get more recent in terms of how recently things were on Kickstarter. Dwellings of Eldervale with 5,500 backers, $540,000 raised from Breaking Games, a company whose games I don't usually love. And Dwellings of Eldervale screamed to me like it was going to give me all the things I like in board games. Area control, powers and abilities, tons of monsters on the board, a lot of things to like in this game system. And a lot of people love this game. That's even more of a thing. If you look at the reviews across the board from anyone who has played this game, from the Dice Tower, from, well, anyone else who I'm just not thinking of their names, but almost every review I've seen of this game has been immensely positive. This is one where I am definitely the odd man out. Not the only man out, but I'm definitely in the exception as someone who did not think this game was more than good. It was good. I enjoyed it. I'm happy to play it. I think we played, if I recall correctly, we played 4 games. Maybe it was 5. I think it was 4. We played 4 games before I moved on from it. One of those games was better. That's me dropping a dice again. One of those games was better than average. It was a solid experience, and I really enjoyed it. The other 3 were average for me. They didn't give me the experience I want in games. It felt half frustrating and half rewarding. There's a lot of powers and abilities in this game. There's a lot of combo building. I had a few complaints from the monsters feeling underutilized, to the actual combat feeling underwhelming, to the combos and abilities that you can build out with your card row often being frustrated by the fact that more often than not, it was more impactful and important to choose the card that would give you the most points rather than the card that would actually build out your combo. The way these cards worked in the system of how you'd kind of multiply the cards based on your status in that element meant you often had to choose the thing, not had to, it was better off for you to choose the thing that would give you 5 points than the thing that would give you 1 point but build out a better combo, which frustrates the entire point of powers and abilities in games. Don't give me the powers and abilities if taking them is the inefficient way to play. Now again, this is all my own impressions. Now, everything I ever say is my own reaction, but more so when I'm the odd man out, I feel the need to warn people. There are other people who love this game, a lot more other people. I'm in the minority on this one as being someone who thought Dwellings of Eldervale was a perfectly okay game, but not one that I felt the need to own. This is one that I sold for more than what I paid for it, and I could have sold it for a lot more than what I paid for it, given how obsessed people were with this game. Moving on, we have Deep Madness second printing. This is, I think, the other one, looking through my titles. Yeah, we got 2 left, this one and one other, and this is the other one that I did not back, but rather I traded for this one. Deep Madness is a game that I still like this game, to be very clear. I still like this game, and in a world where I had fewer games, I would still own this game. Deep Madness has you undersea, trying to basically explore through underwater caverns and adventures and dive underwater with your crew as you slowly struggle to stay alive across the onslaught of monsters that are heading your way. The miniatures are great, the art is great, the story cards, you slowly unlock these story cards giving you hints of what had happened underwater on the station of, something happened, we turned a panel, something's glittering in the wiring, whatever it is. It had these little slow unlocks as you figured out what happened in this underwater story, and you'd go through campaign after campaign, mission after mission in this campaign to try to figure things out. And this game is difficult. It is brutally difficult, and I loved it. I thought it was excellent. Ultimately, for me, this one comes down to I have too many games in this genre, too many games that put me and a bunch of main characters into a zone where I have to figure out an objective. There were facets of the game I loved. I loved the diving underwater and managing your oxygen and trying to figure out how to survive that way. I love the fact that the monsters were difficult in this one, and I don't have a fine line as to why I like the difficult monsters in Deep Madness, but in Bloodborne I didn't find them as rewarding. I don't have a firm answer. I'd have to play them back to back and think through those nuances, but I liked it in Bloodborne. Ultimately, it was one that there were a little too many nitpicky things to manage in the game. The difficulty was a little too high, and the theme was not as much to my taste. All small reasons why I got rid of this one in favor of keeping my, gigantic collection of Zombicide, what's the game? What's the other game? Jeez. Massive Darkness, there we go, just blanking on the names. There are other games in this type of universe that give me a similar feel that I prefer more. That said, I do think Deep Madness is excellent, and I would happily, in a world with more time, I'd happily explore this game even further. And yes, this one I also was able to sell for more than it was worth. Again, this is the whole point of my channel, of covering these games. If you pick the right games, you can almost always sell them for more than what they're worth. Granted, this whole list is easy pickings because the big box miniature games from established companies, those are fairly consistently, worth what you pay for them. And then lastly, we have Rising Sun. Rising Sun, we got 4 minutes to go. We got extra time here. Rising Sun from CMON. This is one that I backed a long time ago. I backed this on Kickstarter when it came out, and then I played a few games, and I was like, this is fun. Also, I'd rather play Blood Rage, so I'll just play more Blood Rage, and I'll get back to this later. And 3 years passed. Genuinely, 3 years passed. I did not play this game for 3 years before eventually having a good group of people this past year where I was able to knock out 2 or 3 more games of it and realized that across 3 years my opinion hadn't changed much. Blood Rage was still the game that I preferred playing, to the point that whenever I chose to play Rising Sun, I just felt I would rather have spent that time playing Blood Rage. I did a full compare this, play this, not that, with Blood Rage and Rising Sun, going through the aspects of the two games and why Blood Rage for me is incredible and why Rising Sun, I'd just rather play Blood Rage. Now, to be clear, not every game in my collection is going to be as fun as Blood Rage, and I still keep them. Rather, the feeling these two games gave me. While they are different games, while I can understand anyone who says they're just totally different games, blah, 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 this, that, and the other, I understand that. But because of the core aspect of having those 3 ages, drafting the monsters in different ways, the way you get those monsters, but the general style of area control and everything else going on in this game gave me a similar feeling, and whenever I played Rising Sun, I would rather have spent the time playing Blood Rage. Which is sad, because the miniatures are amazing, the monsters are amazing, I had everything for the game. This is such a solid game in many counts. And yet, I speaking for myself, I'd just rather play Blood Rage. This is one, by the way, that's still on my shelf, right over there. I need to actually turn around and sell this one. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I will. This one will make more than what I paid for it easily, because Rising Sun is worth a decent amount on the secondary market, just because it's hard to get the Kickstarter version. I think I have everything except for the playmat. And that's going to be a list of 12 games, 12 big box Kickstarters that did not work out for me, and why. I'm sure there are more. There are others I can probably point to. Arcadia Quest is going to be one. There are others, I'm sure. I can't think of them offhand, but these are the 12 that I figured I'll pick for this list. There's a lot of games out there. I back a lot of games. I get a lot of games. Some of them are incredible experiences, and others are incredible for someone else, but not for me. Or even in the case of some of these are incredible experiences that we just have time and energy. We have to choose where to put that time and energy into different things, and so they didn't make the cut this time around. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this replacement of our regular to-back or not-to-back. And as always, have a good one. So it is still Monday, so I do have our little behind the scenes as usual. Two things. One, I'm going to do the very quick roundup of just the available Kickstarters that I didn't cover this week, that I'll be covering next week. Two, well, we'll cover two at the end of this. So we have Soundbox. Soundbox by Horrible Guild is going to be on Kickstarter right now. I'll be covering it next week. We have Buru, which I'll be covering next week as well. This is a 1 to 4 player game, interactive gameplay. I'm just reading from the top here. I haven't done the research on them yet. Then we have Keystone North America. Keystone North America is going to be by Rose Gauntlet, a new company of established people. And this one is going to be, well, it's on Kickstarter. Looks gorgeous. Haven't looked into it more yet. We'll see how it goes. Then we have Prison Architect. This is going to be by PSC Games, designed by David Turczi, I believe, or maybe the solo modes by David Turczi. It looks like the solo modes by David Turczi, I think. But either way, this is one that's based on the video game, and we'll see how this one goes. I haven't looked at it extensively. Effectively, grab tiles, build out your prison, bid for those tiles, or whatever it is. And then lastly, we have Maximum Apocalypse from Rock Manor Games. This is going to be Wasted Wilds, the newest in their Maximum Apocalypse universe. And that is basically the 5 games that I'm not covering this week, but I will be covering next week. At least they all have time left, right? They all have enough time left. Lastly, if you are a Patreon, or if you are becoming a patron, basically every week I do a Patreon video where I cover the games I just talked about in the to back or not to back, and, well, I give you a harsher, much more extreme, critical view of it. It's behind the $5 tier on Patreon. I haven't figured out what I'm going to have this week, but for those of you who are patrons or becoming patrons, I do still want to have a video, so keep your eyes peeled for Patreon. I'll have some sort of, I don't know, video. I'll try to keep it spicy or something. We'll figure it out. There will be some Patreon exclusive video as well. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but it'll be something there. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.